In a dusty attic of Victorian London, a photograph lay forgotten for decades. Its edges were yellowed, the glass frame chipped, and a faint smell of decay clung to it. It showed a family, a father, mother, and 2 children, standing stiffly in front of their home. At first it seemed ordinary, yet those who looked too closely noticed something. "Wrong," whispers began, a shadow behind the mother that shouldn't exist, a gleam in the children's eyes that felt unnatural. And soon, anyone who touched or even gazed upon the photograph met with inexplicable tragedy. Servants fell ill. Visitors vanished without a trace. Even the family who owned it disappeared. This was not superstition. This was a photograph that defied logic, a simple image that carried death with it. No one knew how it was cursed. No one understood why it claimed every observer. But one thing was certain: to look was to invite danger. In this story, we uncover the horrifying history of the cursed photograph, the people it claimed, and the terrifying mystery that refuses to be solved. The photograph was taken in 1887 by a local photographer, commissioned by the Whitmore family, a prosperous household on the outskirts of London. At first glance, it was celebrated as a flawless portrait. Sunlight fell perfectly across the parlor. Each family member posed with care, and shadows traced the contours of their faces naturally. Visitors admired it. Neighbors praised its elegance. It seemed on the surface to capture nothing more than a fleeting moment of familial pride. Yet subtle oddities soon emerged. Observant guests noticed the children's eyes following them unnervingly, a gaze far too lifelike for a still image. Shadows in the background shifted ever so slightly, though the light never changed. The mother's hands appeared distorted, dark and indistinct, almost as if something else lingered just beneath the surface, a shadow that did not belong to her body. Whispers began. Visitors reported headaches, sudden chills, and a lingering sensation of being watched. Within months, unexplained illnesses struck the household, mysterious fevers, fainting spells, and accidents that defied explanation. Servants swore they glimpsed figures at the corners of rooms, always vanishing the moment they were approached. Despite mounting fear, the photograph remained in the parlor. Friends and acquaintances who came to admire it began dying under strange circumstances. Sudden falls, unexpected fires, and illnesses that struck without warning. The pattern was chillingly consistent. Anyone who studied the photograph too closely or touched it seemed cursed. By the turn of the century, the Whitmore family had vanished entirely. Their house fell into neglect, and the photograph was left behind, waiting. Over decades, it surfaced in attics, old shops, and forgotten archives, each time leaving behind a trail of misfortune for those who dared to examine it. Modern researchers have tested the image. Chemical and photographic analysis confirms its authenticity. 19th century materials, untouched and unaltered. Yet the effects persist. Shadows, expressions, even the tiniest details remain imbued with an unseen force. The cursed photograph is no mere relic. It is a vessel of malevolence, a frozen moment that refuses to remain inert. A silent predator trapped in silver and glass, waiting patiently for the next observer. The Whitmore family appeared, at first glance, to live a life of careful order and quiet respectability. Mr. Whitmore managed a modest textile business in London's outskirts. His days filled with ledgers, deliveries, and the hum of looms. Mrs. Whitmore tended the household with meticulous care, ensuring meals were prepared, clothes pressed, and the children well educated and properly disciplined. Their home reflected stability, modest wealth, and the comforting routines of Victorian life, a life of predictable schedules and polite society. In 1887, they commissioned a formal photograph to preserve a fleeting moment of family pride. The photographer arranged each figure with precision. Shadows were carefully considered, the lighting exact, each pose deliberate. The children's expressions were mild and polite, the mother's posture composed, the father upright, eyes steady. On the surface, it was a perfect reflection of ordinary domesticity. Yet, the image captured something no one could see at the time. Background shapes warped subtly, shadows bent in impossible directions, and tiny distortions in the family's expressions hinted at a reality that defied explanation. The photograph seemed, even then, to record more than the family. It recorded something beyond comprehension. Neighbors initially admired the portrait. Its craftsmanship and detail were praised. The Whitmores admired for their refined taste. But a few visitors whispered unease. A sudden chill, a shadow flickering at the corner of the eye, a subtle sensation of being watched. Small moments dismissed as tricks of light or imagination. Over the years, the unease grew. Servants complained of restless nights, vivid nightmares, minor accidents, and persistent malaise. The Whitmores explained away these incidents as coincidence, the kind of misfortune ordinary life often brought. Yet, deaths and mysterious disappearances soon followed among those who had spent time near the photograph. Rumors spread, some called it haunted, others cursed. The house itself seemed to breathe a quiet warning. By the early 20th century, researchers reviewing surviving letters, diaries, and visitor accounts noted a pattern. Anyone who lingered before the photograph too long often suffered misfortune. The once normal life captured in silver had become something else entirely. A silent harbinger, a spectral observer recording and punishing those who dared to witness its frozen scene. What had begun as a simple family keepsake had transformed into a vessel of dread. A subtle yet relentless predator lingering in the light and shadows of a single photograph. The cursed photograph's notoriety spread far beyond the Whitmore household. Historians, paranormal investigators, and avid collectors documented its dark legacy, piecing together a chilling pattern. Anyone who gazed at the image for more than a fleeting moment often suffered consequences that were sudden, strange, and deadly. Families of victims reported consistent symptoms: intense headaches, unexplained chills, sudden bouts of nausea, and nightmares so vivid they woke screaming in the night. Some claimed they could hear whispers emanating from the photograph itself. Low, indistinct murmurs echoing their own names, sometimes taunting, sometimes pleading. Shadows in the image seemed alive, subtly twisting and elongating when the viewer shifted or when the light changed. What had begun as a simple family portrait had become a conduit of dread. Experts attempted to rationalize the phenomenon. Photography historians verified the daguerreotype's authenticity. Chemical and physical analysis revealed no toxins, no tampering, no modern alteration. The plate, the lighting, even the emulsion all perfectly aligned with 1887 techniques. Yet the lethal effect remained undeniable, a phenomenon that defied science and reason alike. Theories emerged. Some posited residual energy, a psychic imprint embedded in the photograph. Echoes of unseen trauma, anguish, or malevolence frozen in silver and light. Others suggested a far darker possibility, a rift between realities, a frozen fracture in time, claiming observers decades or even centuries later. Those who studied the photograph in laboratories reported unnerving experiences. Under magnification, background objects appeared to shift subtly, as though caught in motion. Shadows flickered unnaturally, and figures hidden at the edges of the frame seemed to lean, tilt, or move. One scientist fainted after prolonged observation, later recounting that the children's eyes in the portrait had followed him, heavy with intent, almost sentient in their gaze. Even today, in the era of digital archives, the image retains its sinister presence. Scans and online reproductions do not nullify the effect. Accounts continue: nausea, sudden anxiety, strange dreams, the sense of being watched. The cursed photograph resists categorization, defying logic, science, and human understanding. It is more than a relic. It is a vessel, patient, waiting, and relentless. A frozen predator lurking within silver and glass, claiming the attention of anyone daring enough to look too closely. In every shadow, every glint of light, the photograph waits, and every moment spent before it draws its next witness closer to the impossible. The true horror of the Whitmore photograph lies not in what it shows, but in how it acts. It is indiscriminate, targeting scholars, casual observers, family members, and even strangers. The image does not care for fear, superstition, or intent. Its effect is unavoidable once attention is given. Those who examined the photograph too closely often reported an almost magnetic compulsion, a need to study the minutest detail, even as dread gnawed at the edges of their mind. Investigations over the decades revealed a disturbing pattern. Illness, sudden accidents, and ultimately death were tied to prolonged observation. The longer one gazed, the more intense the consequences. Shadows seemed to warp subtly, bending at impossible angles. Expressions on the figures, once innocent, twisted imperceptibly under the viewer's scrutiny. Light itself appeared to shift, as though responding to the observer's presence. Experts began to suspect the photograph was not static, but interactive, feeding on curiosity and focus. Accounts of those affected describe a compulsion impossible to resist. A flicker in the background, a gleam in the children's eyes, or a strange dark shape near the mother's hands would draw the observer back again and again. The photograph became both subject and predator, a frozen moment that lived and breathed malevolence. Some historians speculated it captured more than physical reality, a fragment of consciousness, a residue of grief or rage, or an event that had transcended the human understanding of time. Even today, the original plate is locked under the most stringent archival conditions. Researchers report an overwhelming chill upon entry, subtle, unidentifiable sounds, and shadows moving in peripheral vision despite perfectly still surroundings. Digital reproductions may convey the visual, but the full, almost sentient effect seems inextricably bound to the physical object, a fragile 19th century plate that refuses to remain inert. The Whitmore photograph is a warning in silver and glass. It demonstrates that some images do not merely preserve a moment in time. They trap it, they twist it, and in doing so, they impose consequences that span generations. The curious and the careless alike are drawn in, compelled to witness, and punished for the act of observation itself. Within the frame, a silent predator waits patiently, a frozen terror that transcends century, light and lens, and even now, over 100 years later, it remains as deadly, as inscrutable, and as haunting as the day it was first captured. The Whitmore photograph is no longer merely an artifact of the past. It has become a living record of fear, a silent predator preserved in silver and glass. Every viewing, every prolonged study confirms that the image contains something beyond human understanding, something aware, patient, and relentless. Observers often report an overwhelming sensation that they are being watched, that the eyes in the photograph follow them with a calculated intent. Researchers who have attempted to study the photograph under ultraviolet and infrared light discovered anomalies that defy explanation. Shadows twist at impossible angles, figures in the background appear slightly out of phase with the surrounding scene, and subtle distortions emerge that seem to shift when the plate is viewed from different perspectives. These changes are not static or random. They react to attention, almost as if the image itself possesses consciousness. Even the light bouncing across the glass appears to flicker unnaturally, revealing hidden forms that vanish the instant the eye tries to focus. Descendants of those who had come into contact with the photograph report recurring nightmares, inexplicable anxiety, and accidents that cannot be rationalized. Objects in the same room have been observed to shift subtly, doors creaking open without cause, shadows elongating, and faint whispers echoing where no person is present. The photograph functions as a conduit, connecting the observer to something ancient, malevolent, and enduring. A curse that travels silently across generations. The horror of the Whitmore image is not limited to the deaths it caused. It is in the knowledge that the image watches, it waits, that a single moment frozen in 1887 holds power over anyone daring to engage with it. Prolonged exposure brings a compulsion, a need to observe, to study, to understand, even as instinct screams to look away. This compulsion is the mechanism by which the photograph exerts its influence, ensuring that curiosity itself becomes a weapon against the observer. This is neither superstition nor coincidence. Scientific inquiry, chemical analysis, and historical investigation have yielded no answers. Folklore cannot capture its scope. It is a phenomenon existing at the intersection of reality and the unknown, a moment that should have remained fleeting, now transformed into a predator of those who dare witness it. The Whitmore photograph is a warning. Some moments, some truths, and some images are not meant to be seen. To look is to invite observation in return, to awaken a silent, patient horror waiting to claim yet another victim. The Whitmore house still stands, silent and abandoned, a shell of what was once ordinary domestic life. Its walls hold the echo of laughter, whispers, and the sudden, inexplicable disappearances that marked the family's final days. Inside, the cursed photograph rests in the archives, carefully preserved behind layers of glass and controlled lighting, yet its presence is far from dormant. Researchers, historians, and archivists continue to study it, drawn by curiosity and an irresistible compulsion to understand what cannot be rationalized. Accounts of the photograph's effects persist even today. Those who handle it speak of chills crawling across their skin, a low, unidentifiable whisper that seems to emanate from the image itself, and fleeting movements in the corners of their vision. The shadows in the frame appear to twitch subtly, shifting as though alive, responding to observation. Some describe nausea, headaches, and a sensation that unseen eyes are following them, cataloging their every motion. Over decades, the photograph has gained the weight of legend, yet unlike ghost stories whispered around fires, it carries verifiable evidence. Historical records, personal diaries, and letters link its viewers to unexplained accidents, sudden illnesses, and disappearances. Modern testing, including magnification, infrared, and ultraviolet analysis, confirms the object's authenticity. There are no chemical toxins, no digital manipulation, no trickery, and yet its malevolent presence persists. The pattern is undeniable. Proximity to the photograph invites peril. Its power does not discriminate, sparing no scholar, collector, or casual observer. The cursed photograph exists as a silent predator, patient and deliberate. It waits in quiet stillness, but it does not sleep. Every glance, every study, every attempt to comprehend its details draws the observer into its subtle web of influence. It teaches a cruel lesson. Some images are not passive records. Some preserve not memory but intent. They are vessels of a malevolence beyond comprehension, entangled with light, silver, and human perception, existing at the intersection of reality and something older, darker, and more powerful than reason. The Whitmore photograph serves as a chilling reminder. Some moments captured on film are not meant to be seen. They are alive, aware, and hungry for attention. To look is to invite danger. To linger is to risk life itself. The photograph is not a relic of the past. It is an enduring force, a warning to the curious and a testament to the truth that some images refuse to remain inert. They wait, patient and eternal, for the next eyes foolish enough to meet theirs. Some photographs preserve memory. Some reveal the impossible. Some do both and demand a price. In Victorian London, the Whitmore family posed for what seemed an ordinary portrait. A house, a father, a mother, children, sunlight falling just so, shadows stretching across the parlor floor. To any casual observer, it was a moment frozen in time, a memory preserved. Yet within the silvered glass of that frame, something endured that should never have existed. Something patient, watchful, and malevolent. Look closely at old photographs. Sometimes light carries more than memory. It carries traces of what was never meant to be seen. Subtle distortions in shadows, glances in eyes that feel too knowing. Patterns in the background that shift when unobserved. They are fragments of realities beyond understanding. Whispers of events, emotions, or forces that defy explanation. The cursed Whitmore photograph is more than a relic. It is a witness, predator, and messenger. Every shadow, every faint glimmer, every frozen expression may carry consequences unseen. It waits patiently, silently, claiming the curious, the bold, the unprepared. Scholars, descendants, and casual viewers alike have felt its pull, the subtle dread that creeps along the spine, the inexplicable unease that lingers long after the image is set aside, and as always, the truth was never buried. It was only developed. This is Truth Uncaged. Subscribe, stay curious, and remember, some images do more than record the past. They whisper secrets across generations, and some of those secrets are deadly. Look closely, for not all moments captured in light are innocent, and some truths will follow you far longer than you ever imagined.